You are listening to the cycling podcast at the Tour de France, in association with Rafa, celebrating the sport and producing the finest cycling clothing since 2004. Today we are in Nuits-Saint-Georges.
Where are we, Lionel?
Where are we? We're at our hotel, Le Gentilhommerie. Is that right, François?
La Gentilhommière, I think it's called, but...
Oh, absolutely mangled it. Absolutely mangled it. Can we start again?
No.
Okay.
We're committed now.
It's beautiful, isn't it? We're outside. This is the best hotel of the tour so far, by a long way.
And we know it. We knew it before we even came here, didn't we?
We did.
Which is kind of good and bad. This is like climbing a huge mountain, reaching the top, and it's just downhill from here.
And we're
but
only
less fun than going downhill on a bike.
And we're only just outside Nuits-Saint-Georges, where the stage finished this afternoon. We're sat next to the swimming pool, not actually round the swimming pool. That would
not
be too
in
much
the swimming pool yet.
But François has got his trunks on already.
Well, I got a bit concerned when I was in my hotel room and I saw François march. We hadn't recorded yet, obviously, and I saw him march past, looking purposeful with his towel tucked under his arm and his swimming trunks on. Priorities, François.
So we've got to wrap this up pretty quickly.
I think
so
he's got his priorities right,
We're all
actually.
going to talk very fast and get the podcast finished so François can have a swim before dinner.
Tale of the Etape, please, Lionel.
Absolutely. Well, it was stage 7 of the Tour de France. This morning we were in...
France.
Well, we were in Troyes, weren't we? The home of andouillette. And we've come to Nuits-Saint-Georges, the home of some very fine Burgundy wine. 213.5 kilometres, fairly formulaic stage. Again, the breakaway featured familiar jerseys, Maxime Bouet of Fortuneo Oscaro, Manuele Mori of UAE Team Emirates, Johan Gen of Direct Energy, and Dylan van Baarle of Cannondale. And with it being such a long stage, you might have expected the break to be given perhaps a little bit more of an advantage than they got, but they were only allowed 3 minutes 40, so there was never any chance of them staying away to the finish. And then we had really quite an extraordinary sprint, one of the closest I've ever seen. I've never seen a sprint that close. If you look at the photo finish picture that they showed on television, there's really no splitting them. Officially, the gap was 6 millimetres, according to Tissot timing. They've looked at some super duper images and come up with...
Is that a technical term?
Super duper images, yeah. Well, there was a bit of mystery after the finish about exactly how this is done. But Rolf Aldag of Dimension Data, the team of Edvald Boasson Hagen, who finished second, was satisfied by the picture that he had seen, so there's no controversy or conspiracy here. Marcel Kittel, the German, was given the verdict.
You had an elaborate conspiracy theory, Lionel.
We'll come on to that in a moment. We'll just update on what's happened. Kittel's won the stage, his 12th of his career, the 3rd of this tour. He's equalled Eric Zabel's record for a German rider. Boasson Hagen second by the narrowest of margins. Michael Matthews third, Alexander Kristoff fourth, John Degenkolb fifth. Arnaud Demar only 11th, not a great result for Demar, so he lost the green jersey to Kittel. Overall, no change. Chris Froome still 12 seconds ahead of his teammate Geraint Thomas, Fabio Aru still in polka dots, and Simon Yates in white. And tomorrow, there's climbing to Station des Rousses in the Jura.
I was surprised to mention Simon Yates there. At one point I thought he was going for the sprint. The Orica train was in full flight at the front. Simon Yates tucked in at the end of a string of 5 or 6 riders. It looked like he was being set up for the sprint, which should have been remarkable.
If it had been 6 millimetres between Marcel Kittel and Simon Yates, that would have been quite extraordinary, wouldn't it? But I think Boasson Hagen being up there, on a flat finish like that, yes, he is a good sprinter, but he's more suited to the rolling stages.
But he's been doing it differently, hasn't he? Yesterday and today, he's gone very long, very, very long yesterday, about 350 metres yesterday, I think. But today, again, he took it on very early and almost caught Kittel out.
Which raises a question, and it's just, I don't have the answer, I just raised the question. If Dimension Data need a sprinter, why use Edvald Boasson Hagen? I mean, I like the guy, he's a great rider, but I have the impression that Mark Renshaw and even Birnie are probably faster than he is. So you know, it's always that old question that when you're a lead out man, are you able to be a sprinter on your own right, or do you really have to work for somebody else? In this case, I'm sure if you put them on track, Mark Renshaw and Edvald Boasson Hagen, or even probably Birnie is a little bit old now, but I'm not sure Boasson Hagen would win in a sprint on track.
But he's a very strong rider, isn't he? I mean, I know a problem that Team Sky had with him was, when he was part of that Tour de France team in 2012 in particular, he really wanted to go for finishes himself. Maybe not so much 2012, but other years, certainly, he was really keen to get involved where the team was dedicated to GC. In 2012, of course, they had Mark Cavendish on the team.
That's right.
And there was one stage in particular that Boasson Hagen effectively won for Cavendish.
Yeah. Well, what I mean by that is that some guys have that mentality of winning. Mark Renshaw had his, when he was with Rabobank, he had his, when he left Mark Cavendish and he was no longer the leader man for Cavendish, he decided to have a run for himself, and it didn't work. He's a fast rider, but he was always beaten in sprints, actually. So it's funny to see that guys like Birnie or Mark Renshaw that are potentially faster than a guy like Boasson Hagen, they're not used as sprinters because they don't have that knack. They don't have this real urge to win that probably Boasson Hagen has.
Grinta. We actually had a message, François. I'm sorry to do this to you in the podcast because who am I to correct your linguistic skills? But we had a message from Fran Reyes, friend of the podcast, Fran Reyes, Spanish journalist, who said, just a quick note for François, we don't say grinta in Spanish, it is an Italian word. I think you said that the other day. Sorry.
There's so much for me. Yeah, okay.
Well, François has had 6 perfect days on the podcast, but with our penchant for pointing out everybody's mistakes in a nitpicky way.
With Daniel not here, somebody has to do it. Listen, one thing as well, just for the avoidance of any doubt, the water challenge the other day was there was absolutely no rigging or there's no conspiracy theory there, like Lionel's conspiracy theory about today's stage. That it was absolutely a fair challenge. François had no idea what waters he was drinking. It was taste buds alone. What was his conspiracy theory again?
Well, it was very light-hearted. As we were walking back from the buses, Rich, I was, looking at the story from every possible angle, and there was this when the Peter Sagan, Mark Cavendish controversy was raging about whether Sagan should have been sent home. People were asking whether Dimension Data's position as one of the Tour's partners would have had any bearing on the decision to disqualify Sagan. Now, no, because the decision...
Also, why is it in Dimension Data's interest to send Sagan home?
Well, it's not, but quite apart from the fact it wasn't an ASO decision, it was a UCI commissaire decision, and while those two bodies do talk to one another, I would be very surprised if there was any pressure.
So it was the wrong decision, but not for that reason.
It was the wrong decision, but not for that reason. But today, with the very close sprint finish, I was thinking, well, maybe to put aside any suspicion that Dimension Data have been favoured in this very close photo finish that none of us have been able to see. Perhaps there's been a double switcheroo and they fixed it in favour of Quick-Step.
In order to avoid the accusation that they fixed it. So it's fixed, but fixed in order to avoid the accusation of it being fixed.
Absolutely.
Can I have an even more wicked conspiracy theory? They did it on purpose to have such a close finish so that Dimension Data could come up with these nice pictures and show how good they are, telling the winner from the second place.
But we're not the conspiracy theory podcast, are we? We're the cycling podcast. And we were down at the finish line and in amongst the team buses. We caught a few words from Edvald Boasson Hagen, who didn't win the stage but came very, very close. So let's hear.
Here he is.
About the photo, it was just it was really close, and I didn't really know. Yeah, the team did really well. They took me all the way to the line, and I sprinted. It was a really good lead out, and ran in the last meters there. That was really, really good. Of course, I'm happy with it, but I would like to win, of course. But I was really close on the line there, and I'm really happy with what a team was leading me out. They did a really good job, so it's pity I didn't make it all the way to the line.
But this gives you confidence for the next chances in the sprint?
Yeah, it does. I'm not a sprinter actually, so for one of these flat stages, so I'm really happy to be up there, and so that's really good.
That was Edvald Boasson Hagen, always very mild-mannered, isn't he? I mean, François was talking about that grinta, that little extra, that sort of killer instinct that you need to win. And I don't want to sound like I'm being harsh, because I think Edvald Boasson Hagen is a very nice guy who's very popular. He didn't seem that annoyed to have lost the stage by so little, which surprised me.
No, he was smiling and
he was very.
looking
he said,
quite
"Oh,
happy.
second's quite good."
Yeah, I mean, well, and also Marcel Kittel had that thrust of aggression over the line, didn't he? And Edvald Boasson Hagen didn't, and that was what the difference was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean Kittel when he's launched at such a speed and with the power. I mean, Demar yesterday was saying we were talking about his blue wing flying past, and today Demar again said, with the bulk he has, it's like kind of a bullet, and you can hear the noise, you can feel the power, you can feel the strength of this guy, and obviously that made a difference, and it made such a difference. Then this year 3 sprint wins in the Tour is quite impressive. He's heading to. I don't see why he should lose the other up and coming sprints in the next couple of weeks. Maybe the mountains will affect him a little bit, but this superiority is such that really we know that Greipel always wins one, so he will win one, probably. Which one we don't know, but Kittel could easily win 2 more or maybe 3 more, and could really have a kind of a grand slam of sprint wins on this tour. I mean, I really can't see anybody really challenging Kittel. Demar won, but we saw it was a very, very contentious sprint. So far, I really can't see any opposition for Kittel. Let's face it.
Scoring a lot of points for my fantasy team.
Well, that's the most important
He's propping
thing.
it up at the moment.
Before we talk a bit more about Kittel, also down at the finish line, it was a special day for Boasson Hagen because his parents arrived this afternoon. Sinja Boasson, his mum, and Odd Erik Hagen, his dad. It's 6 years to the day that Boasson Hagen won his first Tour de France stage in Lisieux. That was on July the 7th, 2011, when he was riding for Team Sky. But I had a quick chat with Edvald Boasson Hagen's mum, Sinja.
We have just arrived. We got from Norway this morning, so we came 20 minutes before the line. So, well,
did you think he'd won it, maybe?
I hoped. It's this day in 2011 he won last time. So.
Is that why you chose to come today on the 6th anniversary?
Not really, but I said to Edvald last evening and sent him a picture from my diary, and where he won in 2011, and I will try, he said.
I'm sorry the result didn't go your way today, but maybe another day in the Tour will be Edvald's day.
It was so close.
It was more than so close.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how they told the difference in the photo.
No, was nearly no difference.
Well,
but next time.
Hi, I'm Reese, the head barista in the Rafa Clubhouse in Copenhagen, and you are listening to the Cycling Podcast in association with Rafa.
The Rafa Cycling Club is the largest global community of its kind. Members share their passion for the road through rides, events, exclusive club kit and racing. Find out more at rafa.cc.
Thank you very much indeed to Rafa for sponsoring the Cycling Podcast. And we have our first Peddler de Charme of this Tour de France. The poll opened a day ago. Voting was open for 23 hours. And the winner was, drumroll, Taylor Phinney. Quite a convincing victory, actually, for Taylor Phinney. So I will go and present him with a T-shirt. Maybe not tomorrow, but the day after. But he got 58% of 1,180 votes. Guillaume van Keersbroek was second. Johan Fredo was third, and Tish Benot was fourth. His bottle giving to a child, not enough, clearly, to impress our listeners.
Well, Taylor Phinney is the dictionary definition of charming pedalling, isn't he, when you watch him in action?
I mean, if Taylor Phinney ended his career without a Peddler de Charme T-shirt, something would have gone wrong.
Yeah.
And so I just hope that the small, beautifully made and designed T-shirts that we have from Rafa, I just hope it fits him okay. But we'll see. And all we require him to do is hold it up in front of the camera. What he does with it thereafter is his business. So I'll go and present Taylor Phinney with his Peddler de Charme T-shirt in the next 48 hours. So, listen, the other thing to talk about from today was, I think, Quick Step and Marcel Kittel's win. At the finish, you spoke to Brian Holm, didn't you, Lionel?
Yep.
Will we hear from him?
Let's hear from Brian Holm, the sports director. Well, that was close, Brian.
Yeah, well, sort of. But, if you win with like 2-3 bikes, it's going to get boring. So we have to entertain the people, and so he did.
So what was the gap in the end? Do you know? 1 millimetre? 2?
Well, what I heard was about 1.2 millimeters. So, but he said everything was under control, so it was fine.
Marcel said everything was under control. He knew, did he?
That was this morning. I didn't see him after the stage, so it was always getting a bit too exciting, because when I saw it on the TV screen, I thought he won. Then the bloody mechanic convinced me he was second. I was so disappointed, and afterwards we heard he was won again. But like we're seeing you win, get disappointed, and then you hear win, it's just not the same. So I like the first win a bit more than today.
Boasson Hagen did well. I mean, you know him. Did you think he has that kind of sprint in him on the flat like that? I didn't think that would be his finish, really.
Actually, we see sometimes. I mean, when they got sort of a good team, and we saw it before like Cav dropping out. The second one in the row stepping up, and so maybe Cav spoiled his chances in the past because he was all riding for Cav. But I worked quite a few years with Edvald, and he's a damn good cyclist, and I'm happy I didn't win today.
So pulling my leg a little bit there, that it was intentional, that Quick Step wanted a very exciting close finish. I'm sure they would have preferred a 3 to 4 bike length win, but it wasn't to be. But 3 stage wins and very impressive sprinting. He's done it in 3 very different ways already, hasn't he? Today, I've been keeping an eye on the sprint trains. Today was certainly the most formed conventional kind of, or recent convention type sprint train that I've seen in the final with Quick Step today. They had 3 guys still there into the last sort of couple of kilometres, and there wasn't a great deal of challenge from other teams at that point. But then it all went messy again, and that advantage that they looked like they had was allowed to slip away, and that was possibly I'm not quite sure why that was. I think it's just because people were opening the sprint a lot earlier than they might have expected. Like Rich, you mentioned Boasson Hagen going for a long one. He was by no means the first guy to start sensing the line was coming.
Actually, Marcel Kittel talked about it this morning and talked about it again tonight, saying that he compared to the stage wins he had in 2013 and 2014, saying that in the old days it was simple for him to win. The train was running, and the last wagon to be delivered home was him. It doesn't happen like this anymore. And he was saying, I don't know why that is. He said that probably in the old days you had 2 or 3 trains, very efficient trains, but these days you have 6, 7, 8, 9 trains. And he was saying, he used the word, he said, that these trains are probably neutralizing each other, which means that actually and sometimes they also, he was saying, probably attacking a little bit too early. That's what the FDJ train did today. And so he said the result of it is that we're kind of sprinting alone. And we found ourselves that the sprinters in the last almost not kilometer, but the last 500 meters on our own, which is very unusual. So actually in the trains are doing their jobs. And as we saw yesterday, they start their job actually from the start, because you have these guys taking over the duties for the whole stage, and then but possibly what has been missing in the trains this last couple of stages is the lead out man, the last, the launcher, the launch pad. I mean that's disappeared in the Tour now. Maybe there are reasons for that. Guys were injured, guys were involved in crashes, or trains were probably dismantled a little bit with the crashes. But in any case, they're all struggling to tell you why. And today he was saying that he was not surprised that Boasson Hagen became second, because actually the Dimension Data train went into action just at the right time, which is is becoming very important.
Well, I mean, Reinhard Janse van Rensburg, the South African champion, did a fantastic turn for Boasson Hagen. That was really the point where Quick-Step lost control of things. You always notice when a national champion jersey is doing something. So but that was a noticeable effort from Van Rensburg there, and that gave Boasson Hagen the springboard to almost win the stage. Almost got it right.
You don't always notice a national champions jersey doing something, because we should mention Team Sunweb, who have a very anonymous national champions jersey in Sinkeldam, the Dutch champion. But we should mention them because they did a very good job today as well, and Michael Matthews was third, but they were very prominent towards the end as well. Returning to Quick-Step, there were two big team bosses, big cheeses, who arrived today. For my first sighting of both of them, coincidentally, as we arrived to very nice wine country. Jonathan Vaughters was one of them.
That's an absolute coincidence. There's no correlation between Jonathan Vaughters arriving in the heart of Burgundy wine production.
And Patrick Lefevere was the other one.
Who also likes nice wine, doesn't he?
Exactly. There has been, of course, great uncertainty over the future of Quick-Step. None of the riders have signed up beyond this year, although it has been reported that Philippe Gilbert has signed a contract extension, but great uncertainty over the team. There was a report in the Belgian media last week that the team's future was assured and secured, and Patrick Lefevere reacted very angrily to that. One suspects because they will make a formal announcement at some point, perhaps during the tour, which they have done in the past. Anyway, I spoke to Patrick Lefevere at the finish a little bit about Marcel Kittel, Dan Martin, who's their GC hope, and the future of the team. Patrick, you've got Marcel Kittel dominating the sprints and Dan Martin up there as well. You must be enjoying this tour.
Yes, I was looking a little bit not forward to come to the tour. It's like a heavy thing. It's my 35th, but there's one thing I never will leave at home, my will to win with the team.
And obviously Kittel has won a few stages now. What can we expect, do you think, from Dan Martin?
Well, I think Dan is very confident about his shape, about his condition. He was working very hard for months to have this goal, and until now everything goes okay.
Well, the Tour de France is the one thing that has eluded you. I mean, could you have a Tour winner this year?
Well, it's too early to say those things. Of course, we're not a favorite, but we're looking like we're doing with Marcel, die bataille, and when he can surprise one of the bigs one day, why not?
And will we have any news during the tour about the future of the team?
I hope I can do this during the tour. Yes.
You confident?
I'm always confident, but I'm also realistic. I'm a bookkeeper.
So it's been claimed that the team is guaranteed a future. Is that not quite the case yet? Are we still waiting for confirmation of that?
Yeah, you ask me this every day. I wish I could say yes, it's all okay, but for me it's okay when it's signed.
I asked Patrick Lefevere there about Dan Martin's chances in the race, and the Tour de France is the one race that he's never won as a team boss in all his years in charge. It's the title that has eluded him. I don't necessarily think that Dan Martin can win this tour. However, on the evidence so far, he is clearly in the form of his life, and he's ridden extremely well. Yeah,
he's had a bad time with signing GC riders, hasn't he? Over the years, who have they had? I mean, they put a lot of money into a Spanish guy who showed a lot of promise, Pesha Roman. I remember he was being talked of as the next big thing. Then there was the Venezuelan rider, whose name escapes me, but had done very well in the Giro, and they piled a lot of money into him. And really,
they even tried Rigoberto Urán.
They did, yeah, and that didn't work out for him terribly well.
Well, I mean, second in the Giro, wasn't he, at Quick-Step?
But he didn't win it. That's the thing.
And nowhere in the Tour de France. But
No.
Dan Martin, he's a very good bet for the top 5. The way things are looking at the moment,
He'll be in the top 5. I'm
when
sure.
you look at the course and you look at the way he's can climb and the types of climbs, they're not the conventional 18-kilometre grind from bottom to top, which is where he tends to, because it doesn't look like a terribly efficient climbing style. It's obviously very effective, but effective on the the shorter or the climbs where the gradient changes a bit, and he can use his head as much as his legs. When it's just a long grind and he gets into that kind of nodding motion, that's when he's putting an awful lot of movement into his upper body, but seems to be going backwards when the really fast guys start riding away from him. But looking on this course, the only undoing for him I can see is the time trial in Marseille, and even that isn't too bad for him because of the climb that's in the middle.
Is a changing rider and a changed rider. I mean, when he was with Cannondale or whatever the name of the team was at the time. He won Liège, as we know. He was that type of rider. Well, he showed the other day in Longwy that it kept that that feeling for these short final climbs, and he still had this push. But he's improved. Last year, I think it took him time to make the transition from a great rider who can win classics, especially if they're very hilly, or maybe can win a great Grand Tour stage in the mountains, but only one stage. To make this transition to a Grand Tour leader and a GC contender is difficult. He changed teams to achieve that. He moved to Andorra. He achieved there was lots of changes in his life and his career, and that's why last year you could tell he was very, very nervous about it, very fidgety. He's always been one of the nicest guys in the peloton, and last year you could tell he was not so nice with us. I mean, you could feel the nerves and everything around it, and he was skinny, really skinny last year, and is regained a little bit of bulk this season, I found. So I think he's probably found the right balance mentally to adjust to his position, and also the right balance physically for the job. So he's still a very good rider in stages like Longwy, and we'll have to see. But I bet being in Andorra and practicing in these very, very tall, high altitude climbs, that is probably got everything required to be in the top 5. Evidently, and maybe in the top 3. Well,
I remember my sort of abiding memory of Dan Martin's tour last year was his disappointment after the stage 2 Luchon, the one where Chris Froome just accelerated over the top of the Périssord, the final climb, and caught everybody by surprise, really, because they thought, well, why is he going now with 150 metres to go to the top? There's only the descent. What's he going to? No one reacted, did they? And then, of course, he did his frog on a skateboard descending act and won the stage and took the yellow jersey. And Dan Martin, after that stage, was really kicking himself for not seeing that as an opportunity and realising, I think, that you have to pick days in the Tour to race like they're a classic, not just think, well, I'm going over the 3 weeks, so I don't necessarily want to make a big effort here now. Sometimes you have to take that risk on those key moments. I know he fell away after that, but you just never know, because the Tour is all about getting into position first and then conserving, because things do calm down in that final week, don't they? Everyone settles into their position. So if he can get through, say, this weekend, still in the top 3, 4 or 5, then I think we're on for seeing a great GC result from Dan Martin.
Perhaps another reason is that Quick-Step had far too many good riders in the teams in the past. But then the fact that Julien Alaphilippe is not there, or Tony Martin, makes a difference, because these guys are not going for stage wins. So you have Kittel in the one hand, and you have Dan Martin on the other, and nobody in between. Last year, or if Alaphilippe had been here, you would have had, they would have gone for stage win. That's the culture of Quick-Step, and probably hampered the GC's chances in the past. This time, Kittel has done his job. He's doing it well. He will do it again. Now it's time for Dan Martin to go for a good GC ranking.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport.
Hello, my name is James Morton. I'm the head of nutrition for Team Sky. I'm also a reader in exercise metabolism at Liverpool John Moores University. And last but not least, the world-class knowledge director for Science in Sport. I think the role of protein really is we're gaining increased knowledge with every year what protein can do in the body, especially to muscle recovery and muscle adaptation. We've just published a study on the Liverpool first team players where we've analysed their dietary intakes over a 2-game week period, and we've seen that the daily protein intakes was around 2.5 grams per kilogram body mass. Now, prior studies of elite football players were done back in the 1980s, early 1990s, and the protein intakes in those days was only between 1 gram to 1.5 grams per kilo. The demands of the game haven't changed that much in 20 years. I think what's happening is athletes and sports scientists are now becoming increasingly aware of the role of protein, and of course driven by commercial companies with protein supplements, and therefore athletes and sports scientists are now adhering to best practice protein intake. But the way to think of it is that protein really just provides the building blocks, and those amino acids that are contained in protein are delivered to your muscles, and effectively they help the muscle rebuild themselves or repair themselves after every single hard training session, and therefore it's just really promoting recovery. It's especially important during times of weight loss, because during times of calorie restriction, what you want to do is to lose fat, but actually to maintain all of the lean muscle tissue that you have. And therefore, in periods of weight loss and calorie restriction, then the first thing that we always change is we ramp up the protein intake.
Hi, I'm Luke Rowe, ride for Team Sky, and straight after a stage, I normally, first thing I have is a smoothie, which is kind of a recovery drink. Then it'll be some pasta and some kind of protein portion, so whether it's chicken, fish, or some steak or whatever. But I think the main thing is just a big portion of carbohydrates, so normally pasta, but sometimes rice or quinoa or what have you. If I pass the food room, I might grab a bowl of cereal or a muesli bar or something. It's just kind of eat to feel, really, and eat as much as you can when you can.
Hi, I'm Garen Thomas from Team Sky, and we're fueled by Science and Sport. So I've got my recovery drink now, which I just finished on turbo, and then got a smoothie in there, which that's more just getting an easier way of getting the carbs in, really, when you don't feel like eating after a hot day. And then shower and stuff, and then on the bus on the way to the hotel, there's rice or potatoes and a bit of fish or meat as well. So fully loaded.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport. Fueled by science.
Thank you very much to Science and Sport for sponsoring the Cycling Podcast. We just heard there a little mini feature about fueling for recovery after a stage. We heard what Geraint Thomas and Luke Rowe have, and we heard from James Morton, Team Sky nutritionist, who also works for Science and Sport, works with Science and Sport. Speaking of nutrition, none of those riders actually mentioned that their post-stage ritual included andouillette.
No, I can't think of any good time of day to eat this.
The most French rider. Romain Bardet must tuck into some andouillette as opposed. None of these energy bars or protein drinks for him, surely.
Well, I talked to Romain Bardet this morning about wine. We'll hear from that in one of these days in a podcast or in a Kilometer Zero. Actually, he didn't mention andouillette because if you look at him, he's very skinny, and he has his personal dietitian, who's a guy I know, and is really the type of guy you wouldn't go to dinner with, because usually nutritionists, well, some of them, they look like priests or something, they're not actually for the good old dinner with friends, wine, andouillette, and the sort of stuff. That's not actually what the rider's diet. It used to be the rider's diet in the old days, but it's not anymore. So,
if Science and Sport are looking for new ambassadors, François is available.
I can imagine the andouillette flavoured energy gel going down a storm.
But in the same time, Romain Bardet was saying that he actually drinks wine on the tour, from not every day, but from time to time, if they celebrate a victory or they're in the wine region. So probably tonight he'll have a nice glass of Burgundy, just one. I was also talking to Serge, the doctor from Team Astana, asking him, is wine good for riders? And he said, yes, one glass from time to time. He said it's full of antioxidants and it's good. and you're realizing I'm trying to avoid the andouillette subject.
Well, we were in Troyes last night, the home of the world's most disgusting sausage made of pig stomach lining, tripe. We ordered it. I possibly gave the misleading impression that I'd ordered it for myself. I couldn't, but I did have a taste, and I'm afraid, François, my opinion has not changed all that much. Although yesterday's andouillette, which was a 5A rated, world's best andouillette according to the man at the restaurant.
The guy selling it.
Yeah, the guy selling it. Yeah, but you enjoyed your andouillette.
No, it was
sausage.
good. It was not actually the best andouillette I had in my life, because one thing to know, and our photographer Simon, who really was a brave man, he ordered it and he ate it all. It's very good with mustard. You know, the problem with andouillette is not the taste. The taste is fine. It's just meat, you know, with a little bit of flavor. But I think that's the idea that it's tripes, you know, it's guts. It's sometimes a little bit hard to take for the brain, and at the same time as well, the texture is kind of rubbery. But last night, and when it's done well, it's not that rubbery, and actually, and it's not fat. And that's the thing. The guy at the restaurant was telling us they actually the andouillette I ate last night was done by hand. The guy is taking the fat away with his hands, like he's kind of stroking his andouillette, and it's all something. it's really a craft, and to be honest, no, it was good stuff. Not the best andouillette I've ever had. There's a guy very strangely enough in Drancy. That's a horrid place outside of Paris. Who's known for doing the best andouillette in the world, the 5A andouillette, and the andouillettes this guy makes are better than the one I had last night.
Stay tuned for a Kilometre Zero on food and wine with François. We should mention the Kilometre Zero that came out today. It was Phil Anderson, the story of the Australian pioneer, first non-European to wear the yellow jersey in Tour de France 1981. So Lionel caught up with him and a few other Australians. Very good listen it was. We take a break from a Kilometre Zero for the weekend.
Well, we give people a chance to catch up if they've missed anything.
If you're off the back, it's a chance to get back on.
And then we go again after the rest day on the rest day, Monday morning, there'll be another Kilometre Zero.
Indeed there will. Indeed there will. So listen, back to the bike race. You spoke to Lars Bak this morning, François.
Yeah, because I as I was saying yesterday, you have to admire these guys who spend all day, in the front of the bunch. Nobody knows who they are. Sometimes even the best commentators just don't know who they are. They just say, "Oh, Quickstep are leading," or "Oh, Lotto-Soudal are leading." These guys have names. They spend 200 k's in the front. It's a very hard job. They say that it's their job, and without them, there wouldn't be stages like the ones we've seen in the last couple of days. You might find it boring. Imagine what they feel themselves, taking turns in the front. There's only 3 or 4 of them. Lars Bak is one of these guys, and I really wanted to ask him what it felt like. Spending so much time in the sun, in the lead, and also ask him how do they know what the gap is? How do they know what kind of pace to take to control the breakaway? Does it work all the time? And also I wanted to ask him, because obviously he felt a little bit relieved this morning when I talked to him, and I asked him, why do you feel relieved? And he said, well, the mountains are coming, and it means that for once. It gets away from the front stage and back into the gruppetto and relaxes a little bit. So, let's listen to Lars Bak.
Talk about Kittel, but one of the guys we see the most on camera on the Tour de France is you.
Is it? Thank you. I'm over so beautiful, no? No, that's why I'm here. That's my job. Like Julian Vermoorde from Quickstep, we have both of us have a good sprinter. So to create a bunch sprint, we need to keep it together every day, and that's one of my job here.
But you need the legs. How are the legs with so many kilometers?
The legs are okay. It's more the temperature. I think that's hard for everybody. I mean, it's not because it was so demanding the watch we did yesterday, but it's a long day, the heat, and in that way your body gets really tired. But it's the same for everybody, and we all had a good sleep, and we are ready for today.
How do you cope with the breakaways and with the time gap? You get information, don't let him go further than 3 minutes. How does it work?
Yeah, of course, you have a feeling how fast you go yourself. You look at your watch, you look at your speed, and then you calculate also, is it 5 guys in the break, is it 3 guys, is it 8 guys, and how many guys are helping in the bunch, you know, and then the director is giving you information with the times. And sometimes you saw in Dauphiné Libre, there was 2 times the break went to the finish, so it's not always you can calculate it. Sometimes the breakaway are smart and strong, and then they cheat us, you know.
And Lars, what's your life like when you get to the mountains then? You've done your job in the flat, and then we'll reach the mountain at the weekend. So what happens to you then?
For me, in the weekend, when we come to the mountains, it's more like a gran fondo, you know. I mean, it's like it's physical hard, but I have no really job to do, you know. But in the tour, there's no days where you can just switch off your mind, because otherwise it's going to be too demanding. So you have to always make a goal, even with the mountain states, and then say, okay, I want to still be in the bunch on this mountain and try to drop here and help Andre and get some bottles in the start to the guys that can be in the end of the mountain. I mean, Tis and Tim, you have to help them in the start. But of course, they don't really expect that I'm going to win a mountain stage. The team, of course, and I have to recover, but you can never recover in the tour. I mean, it's you still have to push, and the mountains is not going away over the night. But I take it day by day. If I start thinking about what's coming tomorrow, then like they say in Lotto, we live your dream, you know, every day, and that's what I do.
Are you usually one of the guys who paces the gruppetto, or not really?
It depends. Last year I was one of the weakest guys in the mountains, so I was just hanging on to the gruppetto. 2 years ago I was never in the gruppetto. I was really good uphill. So it depending how shape you are. We are always like, if you are in the gruppetto, you always look for Cavendish. Okay, now he's not here. Andre, Kittel, you know, you always stick together, you know, and then you help each other and do a certain good speed. Everybody, there's always a good, you know. I mean, we always help each other. There's maybe the only place where you see the sprinter help each other. That's in the gruppetto, because everybody wants to come as smooth as possible to the finish, you know. And some days it's not. It's just like, for some people it's going to be out of body experience because you're so tired and you know, you push and so it's good to stick together, you know, and help each other, because it's going to be really hard some days.
I love the line from Lars Bak there, François, when he says the mountain stages are like a gran fondo for him. You're just the idea, just a casual 180k in the mountain, no big deal. You know, stop at the feed zone maybe, and I like fuel up on pasta at the end.
I also like the line when he says, because we've had all this controversy about sprinters and 10 sprints and crashes and Sagan and everything, and the line when he says that the mountain is the only time when sprinters are friends again. That's an interesting one.
Well, listen, we should wrap things up perhaps for tonight. We are into the mountains again tomorrow. A couple of interesting stages coming up. If you're missing Kilometre Zero over the next couple of days and you want something else to listen to, by all means sign up as a friend of the podcast at thecyclingpodcast.com. £10 for the year. You'll gain access to all kinds of exclusive content. Roughly speaking, a monthly show, which this year we've covered. Well, Matt Hayman's Paris-Roubaix win in his own words. We've done behind the scenes at the Lotto-Soudal training camp.
Lars Bak's in that.
Our event at he's a snorer, isn't he?
Yeah,
shares
that's
with
right.
Adam Hansen. Adam Hansen talks
That's
a lot
really
about.
interesting story. That
It's an interesting
the
story.
story of roommates and how they now are regular roommates. When Lars Bak was basically the one that no one wanted to share with. It's quite a nice, touching
Adam
story.
Hansen can deal with it because he spends so much of the night on his computer.
It makes Adam Hansen's performance of 18 Grand Tours in succession even more admirable.
Yeah, I mean, riding his bike during the day, listening to somebody snoring at night. That's even more remarkable. What else do we have in the French specials? We've got our event at Dusseldorf on the eve of the tour. That was released as a French special.
Yeah, still relevant to listen to now because we were talking on the eve of the tour. You can go through and laugh at all the things we got wrong before the start.
We've got Stephen Roach's story of his 1987 Giro d'Italia win. We've got our Giro 100 programme with myself, Lionel and Daniel Freeb. And we've got Daniel's lunch with Linus Gerdeman, also on the eve of the tour.
While we're just plugging things, also, I'm going to say this because our Rafa kit has turned up. The new Rafa Pedaler de Charme cycling jersey has arrived. I've been eagerly awaiting one of these. I'm going to go for a bike ride tomorrow morning, Rich, and I'm going to wear it for the first time. So I'll let you know how it fits and how it wears. But it looks fantastic. It's a pale blue with a sort of cross detailing on it. The Pedaler de Charme logo with the comb and the bottle of eau de cologne. And if you want to see one of those and buy one of those, then they are on rafa.cc.
Great. And also through our own website. If you go to the shop on our own website, you will find all the Rafa kit. In the meantime, we'll be back tomorrow. Thank you very much, François.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Lionel.
Thank you, Richard.